Hey everyone, it's Emily, and over the years I've added quite a few limited editions as well as collector editions to the gaming shelves behind me. And today I'll be adding a new one, the Slay the Princess, the Pristine Collector's Edition that the folks over at Serenity Forge sent over to me to unbox and review for you. And it's got me thinking of a more broad and general topic about what makes a collector's edition worth adding to your collection. Because there's plenty of pros and cons we need to consider as collectors about what kind of takes up our precious real estate on all of our gaming shelves. So today I'll be unboxing the brand new Slay the Princess Pristine Collector's Edition for y'all to see what it looks like inside and tackle this more broad question about what makes a collector's edition worth it. So Slay the Princess originally came out on PC back in October 2023, and it's finally getting a proper physical edition through Serenity Forge. So I was really excited that they're making a collector's edition for it because this is a very well-regarded horror visual novel that has a bit of a twist. It's a bit of an untraditional visual novel. And I've started playing this and it's really fun. So I really encourage those who like horror or like a little bit of a twist with narrative-driven games, something to definitely consider. So I decided to go for the physical Switch version of this game, but it's also available in the PS5, including all the same contents in here. But let's take a look at what's inside this box that makes this collector's edition, I think, rather special. When you first open the box, the first thing you see will be this other black box, which I believe contains the statue. And oftentimes when it comes to these collector's editions, I'm a little skeptical about the quality for most statues. So we'll check out shortly how this one measures up, because I am quite a bit of a figure collector, or a figure snob, if you will. So we'll see. And all the other goodies are also in the box, and they are protected by bubble wrap, which is nice to see. So nothing hopefully gets damaged if you buy this online. And so we'll also go through, of course, all of these items. And as you see, it keeps giving. There's just so many items, and finally our physical copy for Slay the Princess. So first things first, let's check out the physical edition. And as I mentioned, this is the same as the standard copy, which retails for $45, which I think is kind of a steal when it comes to the price of true physical games nowadays. So we have a very nice illustration on the front, as well as details about the game in the back, and how the Pristine edition here has over 35% more content in the Pristine cut compared to the base game that I think initially released on Steam. And here's what it looks like inside. It has some really cool stickers, actually. Princess choices you could have, and there's a bit of a metallic sheen or a holographic sheen that I really like the effect of. And it also comes with a download code redemption that you could redeem online at Serenity Forge. And then this also has some nice inside cover art and the cart itself. Now let's check out all the other things that we pulled out in the box. Starting with this, which is the acrylic, I think the swinging arm acrylic standee. And like with a lot of acrylic standees, there is a protective film cover that you'll need to pull off so that the acrylic stand has that true color and it really pops. And this is what the acrylic stand looks like in its true glory. I've never seen an acrylic standee like this, and I think it's hilarious and definitely very fitting for this game. And then the next acrylic item is this double-sided keychain. And again, you have to remember to pull off the protective film. And they put this protective film here just to make sure it doesn't get scratched up before it comes out of the box. It's a nice size and looks great. It has the same illustration on both sides. But I do like how it has the little heart charm up top that attaches to your keys or whatever. Then right here is a middle bookmark, so a practical item, which I always appreciate. And next is a hard enamel pin, which has kind of these two elements to it. So you have the princess as well as her floating hand. And I like how they're connected with this chain and have these red droplet beads. That kind of symbolizes blood. Another very nice item here. And then this item is a reflective mirror, which is kind of like the acrylic items where you have to peel off a protective coating. And it is quite a nice mirror. And then on the other side is a lenticular image that also just shows the kind of psychological horror that is this game and definitely embodies that. So we've gone through the game as well as some of the smaller items. Now for, I guess, the moment of deliberation. Is this statue kind of up to snuff when it comes to a collector's edition? So it comes in a very nice sturdy box, which I appreciate. So that helps minimize any sort of damage that may, happen during transit. And everything's nice and protected with the styrofoam that's in the shape of the figure. And then we have the figure itself, which, oh my goodness, I'm really glad they protected it carefully because it has a lot of limbs, as you can see here, that could easily snap off. But thankfully, everything arrived intact and I see no damage. And this is such an impressive figure. Like, it's very ambitious what they went for, and the sculpt is very intricate because they have, all the faces of those princesses as well as all the arms and heads that are making up her dress. It's very, very elaborate and very cool, honestly. And I think quality-wise, it's actually pretty good. If I'm looking up close at the face and their expressions and how they're painted on, I wasn't expecting scale figure quality because this wasn't advertised as a scale figure. But I think for a 7-inch figure, this looks really good. And I'm definitely want to put this on my shelf. So I think that helps kind of mark it as something I think is worthy of having. And this is also like a figure that I just wouldn't see in the mass market, in the figure industry being made. Like, it's totally possible maybe Good Smile will have some sort of pop-up parade because Slay the Princess is quite a popular game, but I just don't really see this ever happening. So I think if you really want to have a representative figure of this particular game, this is definitely a collector's edition to go for because of that. And I think overall it just looks really good. Like, there are a couple of seam lines, of course, but that's kind of to be expected. And I think what really helps is that this is not trying to go for a realistic figure. I think, unfortunately, a lot of collector's editions that you see, like maybe in some of the Sony collector's editions, they go for that realism, and it just makes the figure not look so great if you look at it up close. But here, they kind of leaned into the style of the game, and I think it definitely works with the choices they made with this figure. So I guess the question is, would I recommend this collector's edition? Absolutely, yes. I think they really nailed it out of the park of all the items that they decided to kind of choose to include in this collector's edition. All of the acrylic charms and standee to this reflective mirror that definitely plays a role if you've played Slay the Princess, and this really nice severed arm or severed hand enamel pin and a practical bookmark. And of course, this figure that you won't find probably elsewhere, I think is definitely worth the larger price because it is retailed at $200, which is pretty hefty for a collector's edition. But you get, of course, a complete physical copy of the game, which is not always the case these days. I think what's really nice of how at least Serenity Forge handles a lot of their collector's editions and things that they publish, they choose games that have been out for a while, oftentimes. And so it has the chance to kind of go through different revisions and patches. And so once they decide to make the physical copy, you're going to get a nice physical edition without any game-breaking bugs or patches that you have to download in order to have a good experience when playing them. So it's definitely, I think, checks that box for true physical collectors. And also those who just like really cool representative items of a favorite game. So I think a lot of people have played Slay the Princess, and for those who haven't, I think this is definitely a great opportunity to try out this really cool psychological horror visual novel, if that sounds up your speed. But let's dive more into this conversation about what makes a collector's edition truly worth it, just broadly speaking. So for me, when it comes to collector's editions and choosing which ones I want to go for, I of course have limited shelf space. So there's only so much room I can include boxes such as this that are quite large and take up a lot of real estate on my shelves. So for me, I've had to be very deliberate about which ones I add to my collection. So one of the key things I consider when deciding whether or not to get a collector's edition is how much do I love this game, this franchise, or this developer. And that helps me narrow down whether or not I want to get the collector's edition over the standard edition of a game. And so there's a lot of examples I could pull from. Obviously, if you look at my Trails shelf, I'm a big Trails fanatic, and Trails is my favorite franchise. And I've tried to pick up a lot of the collector's editions over the years. But there are collector's editions, even though I love Trails, that I decided not to go for. Most recently, I decided not to go for the limited run collector's edition for Sky First Chapter, mostly because I felt like the contents were not worth it. Even though the Sky arc has such a special meaning for me, and I'm so pumped and excited for this remake. But let me kind of share that despite maybe loving a game, it's okay not to always go for the collector's edition. So if you kind of dissect what was included in the limited run collector's edition, there was a lot of repeats of items I've already bought or pre-ordered. Most notably, I pre-ordered the pin box, bracer box. There was this really cool replica of a ornament, which is a very important aspect of the Trail series, and you got to customize it, and it's kind of life-size. It was the coolest thing, but I was really let down that after showing all this cool merch for Sky that's coming out elsewhere, when they finally announced what was included inside the collector's edition through limited run, it kind of felt like they weren't really worth getting, because the only really new item that looked somewhat interesting was a music box, and honestly, music boxes are really cheap and did not really help the price they're asking for that collector's edition to get me to buy that, in addition to some of the other things that I had previously pre-ordered. Because there's a lot of franchises out there that do have really cool merch that are not included in the collector's edition, and often they're better quality, especially if you look at figures. I talked about, though, with Slay the Princess, that a figure of this quality, that's this large, 7 inches, I don't think it's probably going to be available elsewhere. And so if you really want to have a representative figure, this collector's edition might be something to consider. But we have something like Trails or even Tales of, a lot of, especially JRPGs, those iconic characters tend to get really nice figures that are made by dedicated figure manufacturers that are not just, picking the cheapest option just to stick in their collector's edition. Same with a lot of other smaller items, like whether it's acrylic standees or bookmarks or enamel pins. You really have to evaluate, do I really want these, or would I really buy these by themselves? If they were, say, marked out to this price, would that be worth getting? And if no, why would I just get this package of things I do not want? So that's another thing to consider. So going back to that Trails First Chapter example, I didn't think the music box, even though it was designed kind of like an ornament with the quartz there, it was not as cool as that replica that was available on Pinbox. So I decided that item, though it's okay, I wouldn't pay this amount of money in this collector's edition to obtain it. Now there's some other key features and items that people oftentimes look for in a collector's edition, whether it's actually containing a physical copy of a game, which is always a plus, especially if it's a true physical that doesn't need any excessive downloads or patches down the line. You kind of buy a finished product or a finished game. That's always a plus, at least in my book. And I think for many collectors, true physicals do matter for many of us. But there's some other items that I think you could also look at that could be worth getting, whether it's an exclusive art book. Like, for example, I got the Shadow Dragon, the Fire Emblem Switch anniversary package that did not come with a physical game, but it came with this beautiful art book that I really wanted to have in my collection. Mostly for that alone, but there were, of course, other cool things included in that collector's edition, even though it just had a download code for the game itself. There's also collector's editions that come with a full soundtrack. That is also amazing to see, such as the Sword and Fairy collector's edition that I've shared on the channel before, that came with a multi-disc soundtrack with all the songs, which was amazing to have physically. And I think a lot of physical game collectors appreciate having other physical media like CDs also available in their collector's edition. And then another item a lot of people like to look for, especially in collector's editions, are steelbooks. And definitely steelbooks can be worth getting, especially if you have the room to display them. I really enjoyed getting them in my Trails collector's editions, as well as my Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth editions. But when we consider all of these items, it's not necessarily possible to have all of these things checked off, where you have the full physical game, you have a full art book, a full soundtrack, a nice steelbook, and some other really cool items, whether it's a statue or other smaller items like a replica ornament or some cool enamel pins or acrylic standees. It's probably impossible to get all of those items, but it's, I think, important to prioritize which of those are most important to you, and also are some of those available more complete outside of the collector's edition. I think the trap that especially a lot of JRPG collector's editions fall into They come with a small kind of art book and a small sampler OST or soundtrack. And oftentimes, especially for more popular games, they come out with the full, like the complete or full version later on. So often for me, soundtrack samplers as well as sampler art books are not things I necessarily look for in collector's editions. And you'll notice that those were not available in Slay the Princess. And I think that made sense, especially because Serenity Forge released a separate art book that is nice and thick and well produced. That will be outside of the collector's edition. So those who really just want an art book, they could go out and buy that and maybe the standard release of the game if a physical and the art book are kind of the two things they want. But for those who like an array of other items, like a statue, and some acrylic items, enamel pins, the collector's edition may make more sense. Another example I could draw from recently is the Expedition 33 collector's edition, as well as the GameStop exclusive Explorers version or Adventurers version. I don't quite remember the title of that one, but that was one that came with a small sampler art book as well as a steelbook. So despite me loving Expedition 33 so much, it's one of my favorite games or experiences I played this year, I decided to opt out of both the collector's edition as well as the GameStop exclusive version, even after they made it available again after release. And the reason for this is because for me, when it comes to Expedition 33, it would have been cool to have the steelbook, though the image wasn't really my favorite. But I really wanted a nice full art book and a nice soundtrack that had all the music. And thankfully, those are available separately. And so for me, it made more sense to buy the standard physical release of the game for $50 and then get the art book that I think will be coming out, or pre-order should be coming out in English very soon, as well as the soundtrack, which I did pre-order, and very excited for that 8-disc soundtrack. So in terms of space, I really think when it comes down to it, collector's editions can be very cool, but they're not necessarily essential for everyone's collection for one reason or the other. So I think definitely trying to decide what makes a collector's edition worth it for you is something that can really help navigate the space, because as we all know, there's a lot of collector's editions out on the market, but they're not all equally weighted. For example, I think the most disappointing collector's edition I went for, despite me just loving the game, was the Psychonauts 2 collector's edition. And the reason why I pulled for that one was because it did include the physical PS4 version of the Psychonauts HD game, because I wanted that physically. But all the items in the big box that came in, I decided after getting it, I was kind of disappointed and a little bit regretting that I picked it up. I still have it in my collection, of course, because I love Psychonauts, but whenever I look at it, I'm still a little disappointed that I took up so much real estate on my shelves to dedicate to that collector's edition box when I could have had something cooler that I would maybe appreciate more. So I know it can be very difficult, and FOMO could hit people very hard when it comes to pre-orders for a lot of these collector's editions, because oftentimes a lot of them are hard to get at reasonable prices after they sell out, especially during the pre-order period. But I think there's a lot of cool collector's editions out there. We don't necessarily need all of them, but when they do make a really cool one, it's more satisfying to add that in your collection. So I want to again thank Serenity Forge for sending me the Slay the Princess Pristine collector's edition for me to review, and I'm really happy that I decided to add this to my collection. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts when it comes to collector's editions and what makes a collector's edition worth it, particularly what type of items you look for when deciding whether or not to buy a collector's edition. And do you also prefer sometimes just buying the retail item, like the soundtrack or a different statue or a fuller art book, over a collector's edition, or do you try to double dip and get both of those? I'll have to hear your guys' thoughts, and also a quick plug for my channel memberships that I recently started. I want to thank all my channel members for supporting the channel, both to help me make these long format videos as well as streaming both on YouTube and Twitch. Just a special shout out to my Orban Architect members, Dr. God and Colvin. Thanks so much for your support. So that's all for me today, and until my next video, bye guys.